Is this Canon 1000D a good beginner's camera in 2023? Let's see. One reason this Canon 1000D is a good beginner's camera is because it's very cheap. I got it together with the kit lens, an 18 to 55mm lens, and this extra 75 to 300mm telephoto lens, telephoto zoom lens, one extra battery, and back to have it all, and the charger, of course. I got it for €50, so very cheap to get. And that's of course the one reason that if you're not sure whether you want to go into photography, it's an easy way to start. The images for this review will be shot primarily with the kit lens, the 18 to 55mm. I won't be using the telephoto, the extra telephoto lens that I also got, but I will also be using the Canon 50mm f1.8, the so-called Nifty 50, because that's a good way to get blurred backgrounds and also very sharp images. But why is this a good beginner's camera? Well, one of the reasons is that you have an optical viewfinder. So when you look through the viewfinder, you're seeing through the lens, which a mirrorless camera also would do, but that would be a much more expensive option to get into photography. At the same time, the optical viewfinder gives you the view that your eye also see, and you will have to consider, you will have to visualize how your image will look in the end. When you take the image, you can view it on the back of the screen. There's no live view, so you can't view it while shooting on the back of the screen, but you can view it afterwards, and then you can change the settings that you need to get the image that you like. And that's a much better way to do for the beginner. Sorry about the mistake. Yes, there is actually live view on this camera. If you press the set button, it switches to live view, and you can even, by pressing this upper right button, which is the enlarge button, you can zoom in to 10 times and you can set the focus manually. So that's a pretty nice option. But when you take the image, it switches back, turns up the mirror, and then switches back to live view afterwards. And then you, of course, you can see the image that you have taken by pressing the view button. And now it will be very sharp because you've actually set the focus, enlarging the image 10 times. This camera has all the settings that you need to change in order to learn a lot about photography. Of course, you can put it on P mode here on the mode dial and just let the camera decide for you. But you can also change it to T for time. So you decide which shutter speed you need, if you want the image perfectly sharp, or if you want some kind of motion blur or whatever you like. Or you can set it to AV, aperture priority, and then you decide the aperture value, and then decide, and that way decide how much depth of field you will have in your image. So it has all these settings, and you can even put it to M, so you have the manual mode, fully manual mode, where you decide everything in the camera. So all options are possible here, and that's a good way to learn to progress through these different modes. But now let's look at some images, and I'll talk you through what kind of settings I've used and why this camera can be quite nice to use for the beginner. One thing is, for the beginner, it has quite muted colors. They're not overly saturated, and I think that's a pretty good thing, because you learn how to bring up the colors the way you want it, instead of they being oversaturated. And all these images show that the colors are quite muted. Of course, if you have very bright colors like this violet, it shows up. So I think the colors is also one of the strong points of, for the beginner at least. But if you take images in low light situations, you get some very muted, almost monochrome images, and that's also a very nice thing to have on this camera. Using the AV setting on the camera, you can create some very blurred backgrounds by using small values, f-stop values, as you can see in these images. And also, using this zoom lens that I got on this camera, you can get pretty close to wildlife. This image was blurred because it was taken on 1/13 of a second, but doesn't matter. And this one, I just looked at the back of the camera, found that it wasn't centered right, and this is much better. And the last two images I'll show you are shot with the 50mm. This is one of my grandchildren together with my wife, and this is the other of my grandchildren. So I think the dynamic range of this camera, it's something I haven't spoken so much about. It's also one of the strong points for its day at least, and for the price of it. And it has a built-in flash which you can exploit in to create a little fill light. It's also a very small camera, and it has a very low weight, so that's also one of the good things about this camera. So I hope you liked the review of the Canon 1000D, a good camera for the beginner, in my humble opinion at least. And if you did, please subscribe to my channel and also hit the like button. So thank you very much for this time, and bye for now.